everyone, and welcome to The Bigger Picture. I'm Matthew Frank.
And I'm Kiara Montero.
Here at The Bigger Picture, we're all about recognizing those organizations on campus that you may have never heard of.
So today's episode is a little different. We don't have announcements considering it's the finals week of classes, and with it being our farewell episode to our pride and joy, our baby, The Bigger Picture, we have some things we do want to talk about with you guys before we get into today's guest.
So, Kiara, when you think back to our freshman year, what exactly do you have in mind when it comes to getting involved in WTOP?
So I think at my first semester, I had no idea exactly what I wanted to do with WTOP. I think at the time it also came off very intimidating. Coming into college, I thought about being a journalism major, but then I ended up declaring with broadcasting. And I knew Oswego had a really great WTOP program, organization, but I wasn't sure how I would fit in. I knew I wanted something that would be able to kind of just express my creativity, show my personality, but I felt like I wouldn't be able to kind of necessarily do that with news or sports. So I ended up kind of finding, I guess, my passion with original production, and now we kind of ended up where we are today with our show. How about you? Because I know, didn't you used to do sports anchoring and news?
So basically, when we first got here as freshmen, I did the Tuesday night news for WTOP, and that was scary because I had to come dressed up in a suit every Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to be in the studio, and we used to write our own. Well, we still do. We write our own stories, and we find our own articles, and we cite them. And it's like another class, but it was a fun class. And we used to go live, and I was on the news. I would tell the news about anything political, entertainment, something tragic. It was like a real life news show. So that was a great experience that I had when I first joined WTOP. I remember at the time, it was all new to me because in my high school I didn't have anything that was anything to do with journalism or broadcasting. That wasn't even a topic of discussion.
I went to a technology high school.
Yeah, my high school we didn't talk about nothing when it came to broadcasting. So when I came to Oswego and I found out about WTOP and I actually joined, it was a breath of fresh air, but then I was scared at the same time.
Yeah.
But
I think one of the best things too is just being able to kind of explore our interests. I feel like I would have never been able to figure out if it wasn't for WTOP. Though there were certain courses that validated me being a broadcasting major, but I feel being involved in TOP kind of just showed me okay, I could do this. I enjoy it. And have you ever thought about if we've met the objective of the show that we had in mind? Because I know we had a different idea when we started it that second semester of freshman year, but what it is today is completely different. We talked about it this entire season. But do you feel like we've met that goal?
I personally feel like when we first had the idea of what was then Oz Anonymous, we were so excited to do it.
We had no idea.
Yeah, we had no idea what we were doing. We were just all right, let's create a game plan. We don't know how we're going to do it. We're just going to do it, and whatever happens, happens. And, our first episode, it went good. Obviously, there's some things we had to fix, but it went pretty well. It's just COVID.
Just for some freshmen who had no idea, I feel like we did a pretty good job. So you saw how the other day we had Al Roker here on campus, and some student leaders on campus, especially a lot of us within WTOP, had the opportunity to be the student crowd during his weather report. Mm-hmm. So let's say as a SUNY Oswego alumni, similar to Al Roker, I'm not comparing us. If you were in his shoes, how do you feel like you would give back to Oswego?
If I was in Al Roker's shoes, how would I give back to?
That is fitting to you. For him, it was this studio for students like us. Do you have a similar idea in mind?
I mean, I agree with the studio fact. I would just like to make it bigger, give it more of basically expand the space, give this place a more bigger room, more equipment, more just upgrade it, give it more of what it needs and what the people want. That's what I would do if I was in his shoes.
I actually had a conversation with someone the other day that they're into video production, but they're not involved with WTOP. I believe they're a marketing major or something.
Yeah.
But they've also felt intimidated with joining WTOP, but also they felt the space that WTOP provides, it may or may not be fitting to all students and their interests. So WTOP, we're able to have a sit down talk show type of vibe, but some people like to do on field reporting, and they feel like they might not be able to do that here. Granted, they most likely can. It's just not a lot of students know that. So I feel like one of the best things about our show that came from it is that I feel like now students are starting to realize, hey, they look just like us. We can also be involved with WTOP, because it is a great experience. I feel like I've learned a lot, and I would like my peers within like the journalism, broadcasting major, whatever their interest is, even if it isn't, to still feel like they can come in here.
Yeah,
So.
and that brings me to like a quick shout out to our friends at Perspective Entertainment with what they're doing with Justin and Cash, and Justin, who's also doing field reporting for like sporting events and stuff like that. Yeah, just a shout out to them. That ties perfectly with what you just said.
Yeah. Have you thought about like what has been your biggest takeaway from like being involved in WTOP?
My
Like what
biggest
would be your
takeaway?
number one thing if you could tell any incoming freshman, a sophomore right now? What would you tell them?
So, all right, when we first got here, I was scared. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know if I wanted to actually be an anchor or be in anything of news. But now doing should we say 4 years, 3 years of WTOP, whatever the years are, I'm ready. I think I'm ready to like after graduation, start working, start being an anchor, start being a news reporter, whatever got to be. I feel like WTOP gave me the confidence, although I still have to learn more. I got the confidence to like walk up to a major company and be like, hey, I could be your next reporter.
Like,
I could
I
be
know
your
a
next
little
anchor.
something.
Yeah, like I know a
I
little
can do
something. I could run a little show. I could be a host.
No, yeah.
How about you? What's your biggest takeaway?
I think just wanting to tell them to really just, get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because I think in a lot of the spaces that we will go out to in the real world, we are going to be uncomfortable. We're always going to be learning. So really just taking those risks and, like you said, being confident, believing in yourself. A lot of the times not everyone's going to believe in you, but that's where your own, self-value, love comes into place, and you kind of go after what you want. So I feel like WTOP also taught me that,
All right.
So.
Cool. So stay tuned to after break, as we'll be joined by a very special faculty who is favorite in the broadcasting department. So can you guys take any guess who it is? Stick around.
What's going on?
Yeah, we go on at like 11:30. It's like
No.
What do you mean no?
It's 10:30.
10:30.
Matt, it's 10:30.
What do you mean it's 10:30?
Hey, don't touch that. That's my ladder.
Hey, man.
Whoa.
You know this book was already discounted 10%?
Wow.
Wow.
Get a close up of that one. Matthew.
Broadcast news.
Look at that.
Can we go back inside? I want to sleep in the studio again.
Up like throw it, not able to get on it. DiCarlo on the rebound. Alex DiCarlo.
Welcome back, everybody. Tonight we are joined by Francisco Suarez, a Venezuela native who found himself building an incredible career here in Central New York. He has experience with companies like HBO Latin America Group, MTV Latino America, and is now an assistant professor for SUNY Oswego's Broadcasting and Mass Communication Department, as well as the founder and co-host and host of the award-winning podcast From Suarez's Basement.
Thank you for having me. This is
Thank
fantastic.
you for coming.
Happy to be here.
Yes, I've been talking about this all semester. So I feel like
great.
it's good to finally have
This episode is long overdue.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
it. Of course, of course.
So to start off with the questions, for those who aren't so familiar with who you are and about From Suarez Basement, can you tell us a little bit about it and how it came to be, as well as your backstory?
Sure. You want the long story or the short story?
You can give us a long story.
let me give you a halfway. I'm originally from Venezuela, from Caracas. Moved to the U.S. in the 2000s, so 23 years ago. Came here for my academic improvement. Learn English first. I didn't have English when I came to this country, so I have to learn it quite fast. And then I went to school in Newhouse School of Communication to do my master in media management, blah, blah, blah. The question is how from Suarez Basement I moved to the area of Syracuse 8 years ago. And I was a little lost, I do have to say. I came from working in the private industry, HBO Latin America and MTV, and this area is not necessarily the it's not an area where broadcasting is booming. So I was a little like, I don't know what else I'm going to do. And I was very, very lucky to find an adjunct position here in SUNY Oswego to teach video production. And I totally fall in love with teaching, with the relationship with my students, to know that I still being able to be creative, but also apply all my experience and be able to give that experience to the students. So it's a really cool job. I just love it. And the pandemic hit, and of course, I was stuck at home, and I was like, I need to keep myself busy creatively. So I created From Suarez Basement, which is a podcast that interview or have conversation with experts in the communication, media, and the arts. So everybody who work behind your favorite TV shows and films and Broadway shows, I interview them and we have a conversation. So the show came from the necessity of keep myself busy, but also to guarantee my students that it was a future out there. I think when pandemic hit, all of us, including my students, felt like, I don't know what I'm going to do. So to have a podcast where these experts who are now in top positions allow you to see a brighter future, that's what it was, the idea.
I think a lot of the times it's really inspiring to hear someone's story who could be very similar to yours and how they've gone through the same challenges or going down the same career path. I think for students like us about to graduate, that within itself is pretty motivating. Like, okay, you were here right in Oswego having the same intention, the same goal, and now look at you out there in the real world too, just going after the career we want. And you've had students come onto the show as well too, giving feedback and insight.
Well, I always try to bring students as a co-host, because I do believe that the podcast is about the students. So you guys bring to the table a completely different experience. Your questions that you can ask to a costume designer, set designer, a production designer, whatever is the guest, is very different of what I will ask, right? For many reasons. So I do think having co-hosts or students has a co-host, it does enrich the show very much.
So did you always know you wanted to get involved in the media industry?
I was one of those people that was very lucky since I was a kid. I was with a camera in my hands. Those were the times when camera was like this. You probably don't know that. I was doing films and movies since I was, I don't know, 7, 8 years old. I was playing with Star Wars figurines and doing my films and things like that. So I always knew that I wanted to be involved in visual storytelling, in the power of visual to tell a story. I was very lucky in that sense because I know a lot of people go back and forth between one thing and another one. I always knew was something related with visual storytelling.
So who have been some of your favorite guests on your podcast?
Well, that's going to sound very cheesy, but all my guests are my favorites. Because here's the deal. I don't think there is a bad or a good guest based in what that guest curriculum is. Where I'm saying I enjoy interviewing an Oscar winner at the same time I enjoy interviewing all-coming comedian, or so it's all about what kind of quality conversation I can have with that guest. You will be surprised. I have guests that have these huge titles and accomplishments and things like that, and I was so excited. I'm not going to say who. And the interview was so difficult. This person was not giving me none. Like I was like with a spoon trying to take things out. Very serious, nothing in comparison with the other ones. So what I'm saying is, yes, I have the pleasure to interview. I would think for me, the production designer for Game of Thrones, Deborah Riley, was also an interview. I learned so much from her. The director of Breaking Bad was also a fantastic interview. Lately, which one was one of my favorites? The Oscar winner for Sound of Metal. He's an editor. That was a fantastic interview. But again, it's depending of the conversation. I have to say, season 5 is looking amazing. Like, I'm so excited. Well, because the thing is, you start getting better and better, for your own experience here. Like, you start loosening up, and because you start now getting all these fancy names, like other people that I thought they would say no, Now they're like, sure, I will be there. I was like, oh my God, like I'm going to interview this person.
That's exciting.
That's excited. So, but my favorite, I would say, Deborah Riley from Game of Thrones was one of my favorites.
Okay.
Nice. So, what has been the most rewarding part of working with students of our age? I know your brand also offers like mentoring opportunities. So, what does that experience look like for you?
Again, it's going to sound so cheesy, but you guys don't understand. If you love what you do, the power that you as students has in our life, rewarding everything. Every single day that I come to work is rewarding. Your energy, your creativity, your hope for the future, you're funny guys. Well, I have a lot of funny students in my class.
You can name drop some.
I would say every day I'm inspired by what you guys do. You know, so I rewarding is to see you flourishing and becoming a true version of who you are supposed to be. I think that is the beauty of being a professor, is to be able to see that. I always say to my students, and I say always, the only responsibility that you guys have with you is to discover who you are and be authentic self of who you are. It doesn't matter. The point is that we waste so much time in our life trying to fit other people boxes and check marks and suddenly life passes and it's like, what the hell? Like
Yeah.
I'm not being who I'm supposed to be. So I do think when you come to college, one of the beauties about college is discovering, yes, you're going to learn skills like how to do white balance in a camera and 3-point linings or whatever you are learning from. But I think college is more about that process of discovering who you are, what you want to be, and you know, that for me is a rewarding part. I would say to my students that my relationship with all of you doesn't end when the semester ends. It really is when it starts. And see you, moving forward in your career, that is what inspired me. I always made the joke, of course, as long as you mention me when you win an
award,
an award, and you say, you remember that short guy with the funny accent? Thank you to the guy, right?
Yeah.
I get very close relationship with all my students who graduate because it's a great way to do networking for other students that are coming in. So I still have students that graduated 4 or 5 years ago, and we Zoom at least once every 3 months, and we catch up, and then I invite the students who are actually graduating now to that same Zoom meeting. So you will be surprised how many common things are in common. Like, oh, I didn't know you live in New York City. Oh, I'm working now for HBO. You would like to come and be in a, one day in the shooting and see how it works. So
I feel like that's so important because professors always teach us and help us out and help us like network with other people, and it's also important. Us students, we return the favor, do the same for the professors, and help the professors network and just stuff like that. So that's a really good point.
Well, in the end, it's all about, this is industry, all industries, I would say, but this is an industry that is all about networking.
Yeah, it is.
And again, I think the definition of networking, we need to talk and really have a clear idea what it is, because I think for a lot of my students, they feel like networking is this idea of, oh, I give you my business card,
and that's it.
Yep. And then, oh, I'm going to call this guy and ask for a job. Well, that's not networking. Networking is really a process of creating relationships, right? Relationships is everything. So my first recommendation, I would say, well, if you meet somebody and you really click with that person and he give you a business card, what I do is I do a handwritten note and I put in the mail, nothing that feel too desperate.
Like extra, yeah. That's
just
right,
like, hey, it was so nice to meet you. This is just a token of appreciation for your time and conversation.
They'll definitely
believe me that work like magic, because that's not something that we do in these days.
I actually never thought of that. I would think, like me personally, if I was to reach out to somebody, I would think like an email or something. But I can see the handwritten letter working out more than sending out an email or something like that.
For sure, you know how many emails that person must receive
exactly,
every day?
Yeah. Compared to a letter in the mail, it's
Right.
two different things. Yeah.
It's a completely different thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when we get back from break, we're going to continue this really great conversation with Professor Suarez, so make sure to stay tuned.
And it could be your last chance to see one occur for 2 decades, as the next time one will be visible over the continental U.S.
He's May 84. Yarrow told police in the hospital that he had pressed the doorbell and waited.
They mix with oxygen and nitrogen. They become briefly
What's going on?
Yeah, it's dude. We go on at like 11:30. It's like
No.
what do you mean no?
It's 10:30.
10:30.
Yeah, it's 10:30.
What do you mean it's 10:30?
Hey, don't touch that. That's my ladder.
Hey, man.
Whoa. Did you know this book was already discounted 10%?
Wow.
Wow.
Get a close up of that one. Matthew.
Broadcast news.
Look at that.
Can we go back inside? I want to sleep in the studio again.
Welcome back to The Bigger Picture. Again, we are welcomed with Francisco Suarez, El SUNY Oswego Assistant Professor, and we're going to just continue the conversation. So from where we last were talking about, I wanted to mention, so one thing I've also, being a student in your class, one thing I've admired is, your transparency. You're always very open and raw. So considering, you are a representation for many minority groups in society. A lot of the times they try to put us into a box. You're a Latin man, part of the LGBTQIA community. So what are some challenges or things that motivates you to be that representation for us?
Well, I think it is my own experience to don't have that representation when I was growing up, or even during my teenage years or my adulthood years, early adulthood years. I never saw that representation, and I realized that somebody that is coming behind me, I must be having the same problem, right? Mm-hmm. So if I'm open and transparent of who I am in my entire being, I think I will help other like me at that time to really feel that it's okay. You will be okay. I think when you see yourself represented in other people that have a sense of authority is not a word I want to use, but that is a professor that is in this position of growing up, type of thing. I think you identify with that person. It's funny because when I moved from Venezuela, which is extremely macho culture. Venezuela, Latin America in general, but Venezuela in general is I'm a man, and man doesn't cry, and the whole thing about it, right? So I came here and I started going to school, and I would say at least, 50% of my students were openly gay with their husbands and partners or wife, and it was so refreshing to don't feel like it's such a taboo, so I think when I came here I realized, this is something that I can accomplish myself. So to make the story short, I think for me the challenge of becoming fully okay with my sexuality, with my Latino identity, etc., is a very personal process that everybody will go through. Some people take longer. Other people take, certain people that are being blessed to be fully out when they are 12 and they're having that was not my case.
Every story is different.
Every story is different, and I think we should respect that process. Every person has his own process. I think that's very important.
So let's say if you were given the opportunity, these are some of our favorite questions here on The Bigger Picture.
Okay.
We love a good scenario question.
Okay.
If you have the opportunity to bring any guest, manifest it right now, right here on The Bigger Picture, any guest from Suarez's basement, who would you love to bring on?
Wow, that's a great question. Well, dead or alive, it doesn't matter. I have the power to bring it back to life.
Yes.
Nelson Mandela, I would say.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Yes.
Why is that?
Oh, because I think this is a great example of an individual that have the opportunity to revenge and to use hate to create a movement to take over a country. And in the opposite, this is a person who really show us the power of love, understanding, reconciliation. I mean, for me, he's a true hero. because he was in power. He was put back in power by the black community in South Africa. And that is the moment where he could decide, you know what, I'm going to take revenge after the apartheid was this really, really a horrible situation between, the white community and the black community. In the opposite, he said, no, if we want to move this country forward, it cannot be through hate. We have to be sure that we unify as a country and we move all together as a one unit. And I think that's one of the most powerful things that I ever seen. So I would say I have so many questions for him that I would love to have a conversation with Nelson Mandela.
It's funny because like Kiara mentioned earlier, we asked this question to every one of our guests, but Nelson Mandela, this is the first time he's came up, and like that answer was like, it was a perfect answer. Like it matched. Like I would understand that. So I would agree. I could also interview Nelson Mandela.
My God,
yeah, why not?
That would be. I mean, I have so many questions.
Yeah.
How he was in jail for so many years and he came out of there with a heart full of reconciliation and love, and I don't know if I would be able to do that.
That is true.
So I think that is the amazing part about him.
Yeah.
Before we close out today's episode, really quick, if you're able to give advice to any student who's kind of in our shoes coming into Oswego and they want to get involved in production, what would you tell them?
Definitely be part of WTOP. For sure. I mean, I think what you guys do here is incredible. Yeah, and I have been recognized. I mean, WTOP have been recognized national by many awards that you have accomplished. I think it's a great way to put your feet, in the water and test what you really want, because you have the opportunity to be an anchor, to be a producer, to be, a director, whatever it is that they're looking for. Take opportunities of everything that SUNY Oswego offer, which is all those extracurricular activities. Yes, going to classes and get to classes on time is important, but the point is that you have to take opportunities of, I don't know how many clubs there are, but I think it's
a lot.
Like a lot, 200 or something like that. So it's a little bit of, for every person interest. Start putting your resume right from the get-go. I think where companies are looking now more than just somebody with a title, which is important to have your undergraduate and your graduate degree, is, can this person really take an idea and put it to fruition? That's for me, that's a candidate that is more powerful than somebody who graduated from the top school of communication. It doesn't matter. If you don't have anything to show where you say, I put this idea to the table and we were able to bring this TV show from scratch to what it is right now, that's what you're looking for, right? So more than you can start creating your reel and putting your reel, all your, TV commercials or music videos, whatever it is that you guys do during your 4 years, that's goal, because you have the chance to talk about it and to talk about your experience of how you go to that point. And that's where any employer is looking for.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I feel like that also gives me a lot of comfort with about to go to graduation. Just knowing I have this under my belt, that's a start. That's a start. So any other student, if given the opportunity, find a place for you within WTOP.
Yeah. Like I say, a win's a win. This is a win.
Yes. So I do think that start building your resume and start building your portfolio so you can show the capacity that you have to bring an idea to full fruition. Because if not, it's just an idea, it's just an idea, right?
I agree.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we would like to thank Francisco Suarez for joining us on tonight's episode of The Bigger Picture. This is a great way to close out our series. The point of tonight's episode was to bring awareness and to underrepresented groups on campus, and I think it's safe to say that we did exactly that. So it ends here, it ends today. We encourage all of you to always don't forget to see things through the bigger picture. Remember that. It's important to see it through the bigger picture. From me, Kiara, Francisco Suarez, and everybody who's a part of WTOP, thank you guys for joining us on this amazing show, and we'll see you later.
Thank you for having me. This was fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.